Let me set the scene for you. It was a Tuesday evening, the kind of quiet, unremarkable Tuesday that you never think will change your life. I was sitting on the couch, still in my work clothes, half watching some cooking show I didn't care about, waiting for Marcus to come home. We had been together for 4 years. 4 years of what I thought was a beautiful, stable, deeply committed relationship. We had an apartment together, we had a rescue dog named Biscuit, we had inside jokes and shared playlists and a drawer full of takeout menus because we could never agree on food. We had all the things that people point to when they say, "See, that's what love looks like." And I believed it. God, I believed every single bit of it. I want you to really sit with that for a second, because everything that comes after this moment only hits as hard as it does when you understand just how completely, how totally, how embarrassingly I believed in us. Marcus was 32, I was 29. We had met at a mutual friend's birthday party, bumped into each other near the snack table, argued about whether guacamole was worth the extra charge, and exchanged numbers before the night was over. He was funny. He was warm. He had this way of making you feel like you were the only person in the room, like your words actually mattered, like he was genuinely fully present with you in a world where nobody is ever fully present anymore. I fell for him fast, too fast maybe, but at the time it didn't feel reckless. It felt right. It felt like something I had been quietly waiting for without knowing I was waiting at all. We moved in together after 18 months. My friends said it was too soon. My mom raised an eyebrow. I told them all they were being old-fashioned. And maybe I was right. Maybe 18 months is perfectly reasonable. Or maybe, just maybe, I was in love with the version of Marcus I had built in my head, and moving in together was the first step in a slow unraveling I wasn't ready to see. But I'm getting ahead of myself. On that Tuesday, I wasn't thinking about any of this. I was just tired, slightly hungry, and mildly annoyed that Marcus was 20 minutes later than he said he'd be. He texted, said he got held up at work. Fine, normal. I fed Biscuit, poured myself a glass of wine, and settled back into the couch. His phone was on the coffee table. He had left it that morning in a rush and come back for it, which I thought was funny because he was the kind of person who checked his phone constantly, the kind of person who never left home without it. And yet there it was, just sitting there, buzzing. I wasn't trying to snoop. I want to make that absolutely clear. Not because it matters legally or morally in the grand scheme of what I found, but because I need you to understand that I was not a suspicious girlfriend. I was not the type to go through phones or check location histories or slide into paranoid rabbit holes at 2 in the morning. I trusted Marcus. Completely. Stupidly. Lovingly. I trusted him the way you trust the floor beneath your feet, the way you trust that the sun will come up tomorrow, the way you trust things that have never, not once, given you a reason to doubt them. The phone buzzed again. I glanced over, the screen lit up, and I saw a name I didn't recognize. Not a name that set off alarms, not something obviously scandalous, just a name, a woman's name, and below it a preview of a message that said, "Last night was exactly what I needed. Thank you." I stared at it. I'd told myself it was nothing. A coworker, a friend, someone thanking him for advice, for help moving a couch, for literally anything innocent and explainable. I picked up the phone, not to read the messages, I told myself, just to see who it was, just to put my mind at ease. His phone wasn't locked. It had never been locked, not once in 4 years, because we were the couple that had nothing to hide. The messages loaded, and the floor beneath my feet disappeared. It wasn't one conversation. It wasn't a flirtation that had gotten slightly out of hand. It was months. Months and months of messages, photographs, plans made and kept, a whole parallel universe running alongside mine, neat and compartmentalized and completely invisible to me. She had a name. She had a personality based on her texts. She had a history with Marcus that predated some of our most significant milestones. There was a message from the week we went to his sister's wedding, a message from the night I thought he was at a work conference in Denver, a message from Christmas Eve when I had fallen asleep early with a headache and he had told me he went for a walk to clear his head. He had not gone for a walk. I sat there, on that couch, in my work clothes, with my wine glass going warm in my hand, reading words that rewrote every memory I had of the past 2 years, every late night, every unexplained mood, every time he seemed distracted and I assumed it was stress, every time I made excuses for him in my own head, because that's what you do when you love someone. You fill in the blanks with the most generous possible explanation. I had been filling in blanks for a long time. Before we go any further, I need to take a moment here. If this story is hitting close to home for you, if you've ever sat in a quiet room and watched your entire understanding of your life shift in real time, I want you to know that you are not alone. Stories like this one flood the Reddit forums every single day, and the reason they get thousands of upvotes, thousands of comments, thousands of people saying, "This happened to me too," is because betrayal is one of the most universal and most devastating human experiences there is. If this video is speaking to you, please take a second right now to like this video and subscribe to this channel. Leave a comment below, tell me your story, or just say hello, because every single interaction helps small creators like me keep making content that reaches people who need it. I read every comment, every single one. Now, back to that couch, back to that phone, back to me sitting there trying to figure out how to breathe. I heard Marcus's key in the door, and something shifted in me. Something went very, very quiet. I had two choices in that moment. I could confront him immediately, let the chaos of emotion take over, scream and cry and throw things and do all the things that you see in movies, or I could wait. I could breathe. I could think. I put the phone back exactly where it had been. I picked up my wine, I smoothed my face into something neutral, and when Marcus walked through the door, smiling, apologizing for being late, dropping his bag by the door with that easy, casual comfort of someone who believes they have not been caught, I smiled back. "Hey you," I said. "Hey you," he said. And we ordered Thai food, and we watched television, and I sat next to the man I had built my entire adult life around, and I said nothing. Not because I was weak, not because I was in denial, but because I needed to know everything before I blew up my life. I needed to know how deep it went. I needed to know if I had been imagining the last 4 years entirely, or if something had gone wrong along the way. I needed the full picture. So, I decided to get it. Over the next 5 days, I became someone I did not recognize. I created a fake email address. I went back through old bank statements looking for hotel charges, restaurant receipts, things that didn't add up. I checked the mileage on his car against trips he said he had taken. I am not proud of any of this, but I also refuse to apologize for it. When someone rewrites your reality without your consent, when someone takes your trust and your love and your fully given devotion and uses it as cover for an entirely separate life, you are entitled to the truth. You are entitled to every piece of it. And I found plenty. The woman's name was Danny. She was 26. She worked in a different city, about an hour and a half away, which explained the work trips that had become more frequent over the past 18 months. They had met, as far as I could piece together, at an industry event. What started as professional emails had shifted, gradually, the way these things apparently do, into something else entirely. What devastated me most was not the physical betrayal, though that was its own specific kind of pain. What devastated me was the emotional intimacy. The messages between them were tender. He said things to her that he had stopped saying to me. Things about his fears, his ambitions, his doubts. Things he used to tell me in the early days, in those late-night conversations that feel like the foundation of who you become to each other. He had stopped building that foundation with me. He had been building it somewhere else. On the fifth night, after Marcus had gone to sleep, I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop and a cup of tea that went cold before I touched it. I wrote down everything I knew, every date, every discrepancy, every piece of evidence I had found. Not because I needed to convince anyone. There was no jury here, no courtroom, just me and the truth and the decision I had to make about what to do with it. I thought about leaving without a word, just packing a bag and being gone when he woke up. I thought about sending everything to his family, who adored me, who had welcomed me like a daughter. I thought about calling Danny directly, though I ultimately decided she owed me nothing. She may not have even known I existed, and as it turned out, she didn't. Not fully. Marcus had told her he was in a complicated situation and working on getting out. He had been telling her this, apparently, for over a year. The conversation happened on a Saturday morning. I had chosen Saturday deliberately because there was nowhere for either of us to be, no work to escape to, no excuse to cut it short. I made coffee. I always made coffee when I needed to do something hard. There is something about having something warm in your hands that makes the unbearable feel slightly more manageable. Marcus came downstairs in his pajamas, hair messy, still half asleep, completely unprepared for what was about to happen. He was smiling when he came into the kitchen. He stopped smiling when he saw my face. "We need to talk," I said. 3 words that carry the weight of the world when they come from the right mouth at the wrong moment. He sat down across from me. I placed my phone on the table between us, open to a photograph I had taken of one of the most damning of his messages. I watched his face. I want to tell you that he was immediately remorseful, that he crumbled, that he reached for me, that he said all the things you hope someone says when they have hurt you this badly. But that is not what happened. What happened first was denial, quick, reflexive, almost insulting in its flimsiness. That's not what it looks like. Oh, of course it wasn't, because when a message says what it says and means what it means, the only move left is to ask you to distrust your own eyes. I did not raise my voice. I laid out everything I had found, piece by piece, calmly, the way you present evidence when you already know the verdict. And gradually, like a wall being taken apart brick by brick, the denial crumbled. What replaced it was something more complicated. He cried. He said he was sorry. He said he had felt disconnected from us for a long time and hadn't known how to say it. He said Danny had made him feel understood in a way he hadn't felt in years. And here is the thing about that. Here is the thing that I have turned over in my mind 1,000 times since. I understood what he was describing, the disconnection, the feeling of being unseen. I had felt it too, but I had never once, not for a single second, considered that the answer was to go find it somewhere else without telling him. I had thought the answer was to try harder, to talk more, to book a weekend away, to say out loud, "I think we're losing each other and I'm scared." That is what you do when you love someone. You fight for them. You don't just quietly replace them. I moved out 3 weeks later. Not because he asked me to, and not because I couldn't have made him leave instead. I moved out because I needed to be somewhere that didn't hold the ghost of everything I thought I had. Every corner of that apartment had a memory attached to it that had been quietly contaminated, and I couldn't breathe in there anymore. I moved in with my sister temporarily, which is as humbling as it sounds and also exactly as necessary. My sister, who had met Marcus dozens of times and genuinely liked him, said very little. She made up the guest room, stocked the fridge with things she knew I liked, and mostly just existed near me in the way that only people who have known you your entire life know how to do. She also let Biscuit come, which was non-negotiable. The weeks that followed were the kind of quiet devastation that doesn't make it into movies because it isn't dramatic enough. There was no screaming phase, no angry playlist era. There was just a kind of gray flatness that settled over everything, a sense of unreality, like someone had turned the brightness down on the world and forgotten to turn it back up. I went to work, I came home, I took Biscuit for long walks where I did a lot of my best and worst thinking. I called my mom and answered her questions with as much honesty as I could manage without completely unraveling over the phone. And I started, slowly and painfully, to rebuild my understanding of what had actually happened. Not the story Marcus had told, not the one I had told myself, but the real one. The one that lived in the spaces between all the things nobody had said out loud. Here is what I eventually concluded. Marcus was not a monster. I know that might be hard to hear given everything, but I think the truth is more ordinary than a monster, and in some ways, more frightening. Marcus was a person who had gotten scared and lonely, and instead of facing that loneliness with the person he had chosen to build a life with, he had taken a door marked easier and walked through it. He had prioritized his own comfort over my right to know the truth about my own life. That is a profound failure. It is a betrayal. It is the kind of wound that takes years to close. But it is also, unfortunately, deeply human. And understanding that was the beginning of something I hadn't expected. It was the beginning of me deciding that I refused to let someone else's failure define the rest of my story. It has been 14 months since that Saturday morning in the kitchen. I tell you this not because time is a magic cure, not because 14 months is enough to make something like this fully disappear, but because I think it is important for anyone sitting where I once sat to hear that the other side of this exists, that life does, in fact, continue, that you do, in fact, find your footing again, even when the ground underneath you has been completely rearranged. I am not back with Marcus. I want to be very clear about that. He reached out several times in those first months. He wanted to talk, he wanted to explain more. He said he had ended things with Danny, that he had been going to therapy, that he understood now what he had thrown away. And maybe all of that is true. I have no reason to disbelieve it, and honestly, I hope it is. I hope he does the work. I hope he becomes someone who knows how to say the hard thing instead of doing the harmful thing. But that journey is not one I am on with him. My healing is not his redemption arc. What I have instead is this. I have my sister's guest room, which became my own apartment 4 months ago. I have Biscuit, who has adapted to the new place with the kind of serene flexibility that I deeply envy. I have a therapist I see every other Tuesday who has helped me understand not just what happened with Marcus, but why I was so willing to fill in the blanks for so long, why my default was to explain away and excuse rather than ask and confront. That part was hard. That part required me to look at myself with the same unflinching honesty I had applied to Marcus's phone records. And what I found there was not comfortable. I had known, somewhere below the waterline, that something was wrong. Not everything I had been choosing not to see had been completely invisible. Some of it I had simply chosen not to look at directly, because looking would have meant knowing, and knowing would have meant deciding, and deciding would have meant the end of something I loved, even if what I loved no longer fully existed. That is a painful thing to admit, but it is also, I think, the most important thing I have learned. I want to end this with something that took me a long time to arrive at, because I don't believe in wrapping pain in a bow and calling it a lesson. Pain is not a lesson. Betrayal is not a gift wrapped in growth. But if something comes out of the worst moments of our lives, if some small, stubborn understanding manages to take root in the wreckage, then maybe that is worth something. What I know now that I did not know before is this. A relationship is only as real as the honesty inside it. Not the performed honesty, not the surface-level openness, but the deep, sometimes terrifying, sometimes ugly honesty that says, I am struggling, I am scared, I am not okay and I need you to know it. Marcus never gave me that. and I never pushed hard enough for it. So here we are. Here I am, sitting in my own apartment with my dog at my feet, telling this story to strangers on the internet, because somehow that feels like the truest and most useful thing I can do with it. If you have stayed with me through this entire story, thank you. I mean that more than you know. It takes something to sit with someone else's pain, even through a screen. Please like this video if it moved you, subscribe if you want more stories like this one, and leave a comment below. Your words reach me, and they matter. This channel is built one story at a time by real people for real people, and every single one of you who engages helps a small creator like me keep this going. Take care of yourself. Ask the hard questions before they ask themselves. And never, not once, stop believing that the truth, however devastating, is always better than the beautiful lie. Always.